Welcome to Game Theorem, where we have serious discussions about absurd entertainment.
Do you believe you can escape me before I arrive? How do you expect to outrun me when I'm already here? English, the Lord of Time.
So let us tell you about Homestuck.
That's what we're talking about today. Now, a few warnings up front. We want to try to get better about warning about the content of the franchise we're talking about. Homestuck will contain strong language, violence, and spoilers. This podcast about it will contain spoilers because really when you're talking about Homestuck, understanding how it works is in itself a spoiler.
Yes.
So I'm going to pitch what Homestuck is for those of you who don't know what it is or have only heard it from afar. Homestuck is a webcomic created by Andrew Hussie and owned by webcomic. And it's about a group of friends who they order this game, they decide to play it together, and the game turned out to control their universe. They used it to be able to go through a portal that ends up getting crushed by meteors when they ended up putting these little devices that are strewn throughout their homes. Once they're in the other universe, they have to build upwards using some of the construction materials that alter their reality. Each of the players ends up being on their own plane, and they have to climb higher and go through the gates. Once they go through the gates, they have to go through and go through around this interdimensional realm called the medium. And then once they climb to the top of the tower, they'll be assisted by their sprites. They have to kill enemies. They have to destroy them and be able to get some currency called gris. There's also boon dollars involved. They have to climb their ladder laterally. You have stats like any other game. Once they get to the top of the ladder, they end up having to go meet their denizen and face and have a choice, which confronts them about mortality. All the while, they have to learn about who they truly are and what their mythological role is, including their aspect, which is what element they will control. And when they use it, they have to go and fight in a war against the Carapaces, specifically siding with the side of Prospect against Durst. They have to go in and defeat the Black King, and is affected by the prototypings that they made when they went in to try to enter the medium. If everything goes well, then they win.
Yep. That's basically it.
Did I do okay?
Yes, and we're done. We're done here. That's
bye.
all we needed to know.
No. The story is told in like an unfolding box pattern where it starts off extremely simple, and you only find out how it works as you get further into it. Mm-hmm. And so, you ever watch a show where you see like a reveal, like a twist reveal? And it's like, oh my goodness, like, imagine that, but like every few pages.
Yeah.
And if you're, sorry, what?
That's what Homestuck is.
Yeah, and if you're not keen on reading, because there is a lot of text, there's a dubbed version you can find on YouTube called Let's Read Homestuck.
Yes. So if you don't want to read, you can watch that.
Yep. So, I mean, we're not affiliated. We just like them. We're fans. Yeah. Big fans.
We've watched it before.
All right. So you want to talk about the story behind Homestuck?
Well, you mean the game of Spurb, or...
Well, okay, normally for these deep dive episodes, we talk about a chronological history of the lore of that universe. Unfortunately, there's so much time travel and alternate universes and, time shenanigans involved within Homestuck that is extremely difficult to pull out from a tangled web into any linear fashion.
Yeah, it's kind of impossible. Also, way too much stuff happens.
It would basically just become a condensed version of the actual story. Or you could talk about pieces of it, like a single universe at a time, but then you won't get the full picture.
Yeah.
So we thought we could talk about some of that kind of thing, but what we'd like to focus on, just this would be like a general overview of the franchise of Homestuck. Specifically, the thing that ties Homestuck together is the game that's being played during the story, which is Suburb. Mm-hmm. So we thought we'd talk about the different rules and facets and the things that make Suburb interesting. One of the reasons we wanted to talk about Homestuck today was because we recently did an episode on fantasy. Mm-hmm. And Homestuck proves that you can do fantasy and have it be interesting. Like, it doesn't have to fall on those same old tropes.
Yeah, it's awesome how Homestuck just completely innovates and takes just an insane departure from anything you've ever seen or read before.
Exactly. And one thing that was really interesting about it is that Homestuck originally was a user submission.
Yeah.
User was really originally submit until eventually that feature was phased out.
Yeah, because, eventually he took back control of the story.
Because it was just so crazy and developed by that point. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of recurring memes and jokes, but let's get into the meat of Homestuck. With Spurb, there's a big main quest as part of Spurb. First, you get the game. They're discs, right? Mm-hmm. And these discs activate the game, but really the game is the entire world. It's like an overlay on top of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like augmented reality.
Sort of, but without any type of glasses.
Yep.
So you do that. Once you activate a certain equipment that the game gives you early on, you'll be able to actually enter the game session. Mm-hmm. There's a time limit, and if you don't meet the time limit, you get hit by a meteor.
Yeah.
So once you enter the game, then you'll find out that you need to build higher. Because you have your house, your entire house enters with you. And part of the game tools allows you to copy and duplicate, add, subtract. You can modify matter. Mm-hmm. You kill enemies that are attacking you in the game, and you get currency. You get grist. Well, it's like building material. Yeah,
and that's what you use to build up your house.
Exactly. Now, before you enter the game, you're given a sprite, right? You can prototype it a few times. It affects it. It guides you. Anyway, once you're building up, you have to go through these gates, and then you're facing a choice, which will confront your mortality. And then you have to confront war. Then you have to activate the forge, and you'll get a reward. I'm really summarizing here because we got to keep going quickly.
Yes.
So why don't we start breaking down some of these particular aspects? Would you like to go next?
Which aspect do you want to talk about?
No, not like aspect. I mean, like
okay.
The players.
Yes. Okay.
Facet.
So, all known players of this game are humans, trolls, cherubs, or squiddles.
These are all different species. They're aliens to each other, but not just aliens. They're alternate universe versions. So that's why, like trolls, for example, they're an alien race, but they bear many similarities to humans because they're not just aliens. They're aliens from an alternate universe. Mm-hmm. And they're called trolls because, yes, like they have gray skin and they have like candy corn colored horns that come out of their head.
Yes.
And they have like their entirely different culture and everything. Mm-hmm. And then cherubs are kind of the same way, except they're green and they have skull faces. And then squiddles are like these cute octopus-like things or squid-like things.
Yes, exactly. And they have very different cultures, obviously.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So to avoid getting stuck down the rabbit hole of like troll culture, cherub culture, and everything, we don't know anything about squid culture, really. Let's talk about the types of romance in Spurb, or in the comic.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's not just limited to Spurb, but it's found throughout the comic. Mm-hmm. Humans, we only have one type of love, but the trolls, I mean, the trolls will be a recurring thing. You'll see why when you look up Homestuck, you'll find iconography of the trolls everywhere. They're just such a fan favorite.
Yes, and the trolls' system of romance is called quadrants.
Yes, and trolls are a bit more bloodthirsty than humans are.
That's putting it lightly.
So trolls have a whole quadrant system of love. Basically, they have 4 types of love. Personally, I really like this idea because I feel like humans, we don't really have one kind of love. We just call it. We have only one word for it. Because, we have, friendship, familial, intimate. So I like that they have differentiators. But theirs are a little peculiar. Do you want me to go over it or do you want to go over it?
I can take this.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so there's mateship, which is symbolized by a heart, and that is what we typically consider as love. It's they have a partnership with one other person. It's romantic love. And then they have moralship, which we would...
More allegiance.
More allegiance.
Yes,
more allegiance, which is symbolized by a diamond, and that would be what we would consider friendship. But,
like super friendship, like the kind of like BFFs forever kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Like actual ones.
Yes. And then there's kismissitude, which...
You should talk about auspices before you get to that one.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. There's auspices, which is denoted by a club, and like the suit club. Mm-hmm. And it is a 3-person sort of thing where one person mediates between 2 other people who would otherwise fall into like a kismissitude or even just a relationship that would be very detrimental.
Yeah, it's like a bickering couple kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And then there's a meteor who mediates between them. And then there's kismissitude, which is basically like makes friendship, but it's hate, and the symbol for it is a spade.
Yeah, the idea is that it's like a hateful rivalry. So the best example I think for this would be to have like two people that are like two different warriors that are each other's nemesis, right? Mm-hmm. And they fight each other all the time, but they kind of like it. You know? They hate each other, they oppose each other, but they also kind of like it. If you ever watched a movie where this happened and then they slept together, you could argue that would be a kismissitude.
Yep.
Like, Bond, like James Bond and like some of his girls.
Yeah.
I bet you could fit one of them under there.
Yeah. Right.
Unfortunately, kismissitude often can lead to just flat out abuse. That's why humans abhor it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's romance. There's also there's a species called leprechauns. They only come in if you basically failed the game completely. But leprechauns have their own unique romance system called charms. And it's like a quadrant, but instead of a 2x2 grid, it's a 3x3. And there's 9 different types. Mm-hmm. It's so complicated, most people don't understand. But all leprechauns are male.
Okay.
Just thought I mentioned that.
All right. Okay. That's interesting.
Next, classes.
Yes. You want me to take this one?
Obviously.
Okay. So each character gets their own class, which is typical classes like they're called rogue, thief, heir, maid, page, knight, seer, sylph, witch, bard, prince, and then the 2 like super classes are lord and muse.
Did you say mage?
Yes, I did say mage.
Okay. So yes, those are the classes. And no, players don't actually choose these. They're rather
given a mythological role.
They're predestined to have them, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And these classes indicate how they interact with their aspect. And this is often called a classpect.
Or a mythological role.
Yes, or a mythological role. I assume you like that term better.
Well, it's the official term, but often people just call it a classpect. And most players are also given an aspect when they're doing it. So like the different aspects you have are space, time, mind, heart, hope, rage, breath, blood, life, doom, light, and void.
Wow. I'm impressed.
What?
You just listed all those off the top of your head.
No, it's right there. We have notes.
Oh. I didn't see that there.
Come on, we have notes studied. But I actually could list them off the top of my head. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So you could be, for example, an heir of breath, or a thief of time, or a lord of space, stuff like that.
Yes.
As we quoted at the top of the episode, that was from the Lord of Time. Mm-hmm. And the classes and the aspects will interact together in such a way that it determines how they are used. For example, an heir of breath sort of inherits breath. Mm-hmm. Now that can be interpreted many ways, but he's able to control wind powers essentially by doing that. Mm-hmm. The Lord of Time, for example, his ability is always being where he wants to be at all times.
Yes.
And already being there.
Yeah.
So these things, players don't realize this. They're always that. Like the humans, for example, the kids at the beginning of the story, they will eventually grow into their roles as they discover who they are.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And the Lord and Muse classes are very rarely given, and they're the most powerful classes because the Lord is the most selfish class out of all of them, and the Muse is the most selfless. The Lord literally cannot do anything that's not for himself, and the Muse literally cannot do anything for themselves. So
yes, naturally the Muse is the one that ends up having to try to take on the Lord. Mm-hmm. There's also...
with the class specs, each session must have one time player and one space player.
Yeah, because...
They can be any class, but there must be a time player and a space player.
As long as that session's going to be successful. If you want to win the game, that's what you're going to need. Mm-hmm. And the reason that is because the time and space player are integral to the actual main quest in getting the game done.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you don't have those roles, then you're doomed.
Now, also, troll players, what they'll have is a zodiac. Any player can have this, but it's particularly important to the culture of trolls. Mm-hmm. You might have actually seen this if you look up any Homestuck iconography. So, like, for example, the zodiac, you might know the astrological zodiac. It's from astrology, which is, yeah. What are the, do you know this? Can you name them off the top of your head?
I can name most of them probably.
Try.
Aries, Sagittarius.
Actually, you know, I think I might be able to get it.
Really?
If I imagine the troll characters, I think I can get it.
Okay, go.
Okay, so you've got Aries, Taurus, Gemini.
Leo.
No, it's a Cancer. Then
Leo.
Leo.
Cancer. Then Leo.
Then Leo. Then
Virgo.
Virgo, yes. Crap, this is hard.
Who's next?
Terezi.
Libra.
Libra, yes. Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm.
What's go? Capricorn.
Yes.
And come on, Seahorse.
Aquarius. That's, by the way, that's mine. That's mine.
And then Pisces.
Yeah. Okay. Although actually I'm Pisces, actually, like in between those two.
Okay. It's astrology, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay.
But for the trolls, it's a really big deal. And the reason is, I think it's okay, we're spoiling all the way, so I'm just go ahead and do this, okay?
Okay.
There was a game of trolls. When they beat their game, the reward for completing the game is creating a new universe. The reason this happens is by playing the game, your entire planet gets destroyed by meteors. Mm-hmm. So the reward is another universe, and you find out that the game is a method of reproduction for the universe, which is a giant frog, by the way. Mm-hmm. Just it's a fun fact.
Yes.
So when they create our universe, they also create the planet of which we reside in, the humans. Mm-hmm. So the trolls are essentially our forebearers. Mm-hmm. Now, when our planet is created, since humans will eventually play the game ourselves, that's how the Homestuck comic starts, we have a constellation above our planet that we can look at. And the constellation is predestined to always be named after the sign of each of the player from the previous session.
Mm-hmm. So that's why we have all the zodiac symbols, is because the trolls created our universe, and
the symbols they bore are bared. I don't know the sense of that word. Those became our astrology. The trolls themselves had a 48 sign astrology because their universe was created by a 48 player Squiggle session, apparently.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the comic, when they succeed, there's a new universe that has 4 constellations or 8, for the humans.
Oh, really?
Assumedly.
Yeah. Okay.
So now let's talk about the actual gameplay itself. Now that we talked about the players, there's this thing called a Sylladex that each player has. It's essentially an inventory system, and it's governed by cards, like captcha log cards. You can put anything, any physical thing. So, for example, the character John. He might walk to his chest, find some fake arms in his comedy routine chest, and he would captcha log those arms within a card that is stored in his Sylladex. Mm-hmm. Make sense?
Sure.
Do you want to add anything to that?
Just that these cards are actually really important for the gameplay. So it's not just a made-up inventory system. It's actually, like, designed from the start to be important.
Yes, although it becomes less important as times go on, as everyone starts breaking the rules all over the place. Mm-hmm. Now, the way you interact with the cards is based on a fetch modus. So the fetch modus, what? You don't want me to talk about this?
No, I just think like all these insane weird terms that Homestuck came up with are pretty funny, and no one would recognize it out of context.
That's why we're explaining it.
Yes.
The fetch modus determines how you interact with cards. For example, if you have an array modus, you can take any one, come and go. Some of the modi are based on data structures. That's why at the beginning you'll see so many convoluted shenanigans, as like the main character has a stack modus. So like you can only take the one out from the bottom of the stack and put ones on top, or vice versa with the queue. Mm-hmm. There's one that has a tree. There's one that's hash map. Mm-hmm. There's even one called Fibonacci heap. Mm-hmm. But there's also some other ones that are party games. There's some there about predestination. Then there's just some really weird ones. What's your favorite fetch modus, Kira?
I'm going to have to say the recipe modus.
Really?
Seems like it'd be really cool.
Tell the listeners why.
It's basically like an array modus. You can take things, come and go, but on the back of it, it shows you a recipe of how to make the item.
Using alchemy.
Yeah, using alchemy, which we will explain.
My favorite is Tech Hop.
Really?
It's just so funny.
Because you have to wrap to be able to use it?
Yes. You have to, like, if you want to withdraw anything from your inventory, you have to use it in a wrap.
Yeah. Not very practical.
Can we have an example? We should start rapping.
No.
Come on.
No rapping. None.
Fine. Just look up Dirk rapping with his fetch modus. It's awesome.
What's that one called? The one I showed you.
I don't remember.
It's Unite and Synchronize, I believe.
Yeah,
yes.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
So yes, next we have to talk about alchemy. Oh, well, there's also strife specibus. That's essentially how you allocate your weapon. Yeah,
basically you get a category of weapon, and now that you have that category, you can use any weapon of that category.
Yeah, so the main character, John, at the very beginning of the game, he put a hammer in his strife specibus, so he was stuck with using hammer-based weapons the entire game.
Mm-hmm. And this is separate from your Sylladex and Capsulog cards so that it doesn't take up actual inventory space.
Yep. And then, okay, so now we're going to talk about alchemy. In the game, you get the machines at the very beginning. You have to use alchemy in order to enter the game. You have a time limit to figure it out before the meteor hits you. Mm-hmm. Now, alchemy in the game is
incredibly convoluted.
But it's awesome. Like, basically, you could take any objects and just mesh them together.
Okay, so basically...
Actually, do you want me to explain, like, the technicality of how it works?
Okay, fine, but be quick.
Okay. You have to deploy the crux shooter. The crux shooter will give you some cruxite. This material can then be used, but first you have to go get the punch Designix. You have to take a capsulog card. You have to read the code of the item on the back. So like your fake arms, right? You have to read the code of the fake arms. You then put the card in the punch Designix. You enter the code. It then punches that code onto the card. You then go to the totem lathe. And now, in the totem lathe, you put your punch card in and you put the cruxite in. It will then read the code that you punched in the card and carve it onto the cruxite. You then take that carved cruxite totem, you put it on the alchemitor. The alchemitor scans it and reads it and then produces that item at a cost of grist. Now, if you put overlap punch cards on top of each other, or you double punch something, you can then combine those two different items and have them produce. So you don't just produce duplicates of it using an alchemitor. You can produce entirely new items. Mm-hmm. Players can use this to craft weapons and outfits and just really anything that they want, assuming they can afford it.
Yes.
Now, what were you going to say?
Mm-hmm. Like I said, incredibly convoluted. What is that, like 4 different machines?
Yes.
Yeah.
It requires 4 different machines. However, you can use alchemy to consolidate the machines to make it easier for you in the future.
Yes, which is what they end up doing in the game.
Yes. Now, when we talk about alchemy, like the different things you can combine, for example, the main character, the first thing he tries doing is he double punches a card. Oh, sorry, no, what does he do? Double punching, is that and or or?
I think that's...
Or, that's or.
Oh, yeah.
So when you overlap, okay, so the first thing he does is he overlaps 2 cards. He has a pogo ride, and then he also has a hammer. He overlaps them, which is basically in like if you data structure, it's called a condition condition and, where only the holes that they both have overlap, and it creates the pogo hammer. It's a pogo based hammer. Mm-hmm. And it actually turns out to be a bit of an improvement considering it adds extra force. Now he tries doing condition or. He tries double punching the cards with the code for the pogo ride and the hammer. That, however, creates the hammerhead pogo ride, which is a pogo in the shape of a hammer.
Actually, that's the first thing he makes. Then he does the actual useful hammer.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Well, he makes both, whichever order. Now, you can make some really crazy things with this.
Yeah.
Can I tell him about the most egregious example?
Really?
No?
No.
I was going to talk about how Dave ended up making his own brain in a jar.
Yeah, that was a very convoluted process that involved something else that he alchemized.
Well, he had to use like a self-portrait he made with the camera, and it was crazy.
Yes, it was crazy.
All right, so aside from alchemy, let's see, we talked about sprites. Okay, so basically, before you can enter the game, you're given a sprite, like a helpful guide kind of thing.
It's called a kernel sprite.
You want to tell them about this?
Yeah, sure. So, a kernel sprite comes out of the crux shooter when you first open it, when you get your first Cruxite Dowel. And this sprite, can, like, absorb whatever item you want to put in it. And that's called prototyping.
It affects the entire game, so think carefully.
Yes, because whatever you prototype the sprite with before you enter the game ends up being copied onto all the enemies and basically everything in the game.
Including the final boss.
Yes. So you have to think carefully about that.
But you can do it a second time after you've entered the game, and that won't have any effect anymore because you've already entered the game.
Yes, exactly.
It only affects it before you start the game. It's like a pre-boot sequence kind of thing.
And now if you're thinking of not prototyping it before just to avoid having anything on the enemies, you can't do that either because that results in a, null session?
Void session.
A void session because you have to prototype it in order for the battlefield to grow.
You have to give it something, otherwise you can't proceed.
Yes.
However, you also want to be careful about what you get. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to tell them like what the four main characters, the four main humans, what they did for their prototyping. Mm-hmm. So the first kid, John, he first put in a one-armed Harlequin doll into the sprite.
One eye.
Yes. So it became the Harlequin sprite.
Yes.
That then made all the enemies and all the Carapacians dress up as Harlequins in the game. He then also gave it the ashes of his Nana, resurrecting her. Became Nana Sprite, except she still had Harlequin features.
Yes.
So the next kid, Dave, the first thing he threw in was a impaled crow with a sword that he had killed. It
was an accident.
Another player, Rose, she put in a eldritch doll princess with her cat to revive her cat.
Yes.
Her cat was dead. So the cat like has the princess outfit with the tentacles.
Oh yeah, she did both prototypings before she went in, didn't she?
That's a very rare occurrence, but it did happen that one time.
Yes.
Jade, however, ended up putting in her dog,
which turned out to be an omnipotent omnipotent god.
Yes, we will get to that.
Yeah.
So that made the enemies so strong that it made their session completely null. They failed.
Yeah.
Because they had overpowered all of their enemies.
Well, not generally just the enemies. Mainly the final boss was the problem.
Exactly, because the final boss will have all the attributes of all the sprites. So the stat system in Spurb is called the Echelladder. Now there's many different attributes. So you have Strife, where you can abjure, abscond, abstain, aggress, aggrieve, and many others. And in the Echelladder, you have your Boon Dollars, your Ceramic Pork Hollow, your Health Vial, your Vitality Gel, your Gel Viscosity, your Cash Limit, your Man Grit, or your Woman Grit. And you have Fray Motives, you have Dream Selves. Now, Dream Selves, Kira?
Dream Selves are basically alternate. They're basically a copy of yourself that is in the game already. And you can either have a Prospect dream self or a Durst dream self.
It's like light or dark kind of thing.
Where Prospect is light and Durst is dark. And basically this dream self is an extra life.
Yeah, it functions as an extra life for players in case they die.
Yeah, and it's also a copy of yourself. So if you end up like prototyping it, it will be a copy of yourself.
Yep. Now, you can actually manipulate your dream cells into, you can sacrifice one if you can find a quest bed or a quest crypt. There's this ritual that you have to go through that involves dying and losing one of yourselves. But in doing so, you can go into what's called the God tiers. Now, the God tiers can control their aspect very well. These are basically the superheroes of the franchise.
Yes, they can fly, they can control their aspect. They also get magical pajamas based on their class.
And they're conditionally immortal.
Yes.
So
the conditions of their immortality is that it cannot be a heroic or just death.
But in all other circumstances, they can't die.
So unless they like either sacrifice themselves for someone or were killed because they did something evil.
Like they corrupted.
Yes. They cannot actually die. They will resurrect.
And you might be asking yourself, who defines these rules? The answer is vaguely, mysteriously, and at whim.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Carapacians, I mentioned them earlier. You also mentioned Prospit and Durst. These are the two kingdoms that are in the game world. Yes. Prospit's the light kingdom. They have the army of light, and then Durst has the army of darkness.
It's basically like chess.
Yes, yeah. They are literally chess people.
Yes.
The lowest ones are the pawns. You also have knights, and eventually you have the royalty. And they're the ones that are the final bosses. Now, you also have agents. These are specifically for Durst. I should talk about what they're fighting over. Okay. The middle of the game session is called Sky. It's like this omnipotent entity. It's what will eventually become the universe frog should you succeed the game. It's responsible for a lot of the predestination and paradoxes that are inherent with all the time shenanigans. Yeah,
exactly.
Now, because they know, like the Prospitians, they know it's going to turn into the frog. They revere the frog. Because the universe is a frog. That's actually plot relevant, because everything is plot relevant.
Yes.
The Dursites, however, they hate frogs. They hate religion, and they do not revere this thing. In fact, they want it destroyed.
Which is why they're fighting Prospect.
Yeah. So one side wants to make a universe, the other one says that's blasphemy.
So that's what they fight on Skya, which is their battlefield.
Inevitably, the Durst side wins unless the players intervene, and that's the player's job. That's how you win the game. You have to defeat.
Yeah, your final boss is actually the Black King.
Yes, who's, the black chess piece, except he has all of the prototypings that you've given him.
Yes, he's the Durst King.
So, each player, when they enter the game, they don't just float in the middle of nothingness. They don't appear in the kingdom. They get their own land. And this land takes the form of a planet.
Yeah, they get their own planet.
Yeah. So like John, he's the heir of breath. And
his planet is of wind and shade.
The land of wind and shade.
Yeah, land of wind and shade. What's Lowas?
Lowas. Yeah, that's the abbreviation.
Yes.
And on his planet, he has consorts, which are the people that live on that planet. They're salamanders. Yeah. Intelligent salamanders.
Yeah, each player gets their own different kind of consort.
And that will play part of the main quest as well as the side quest. Now, each player, in order to complete the game, they have to get a bunch of the grist, the building material. Now, the biggest place to get it, the most grist you can find, is in the center of their planet, and it's guarded by a creature called the Denizen.
And each player's personal quest is to confront their denizen, who will give them a choice, which is subject to the whims of the denizen and is different every time.
It's based on mortality as well. So like we talked about the Lord and the Muse, for example. The denizen, in that case, gave the players a choice. They said, would you take the path of the conqueror and thus become a threat to all of reality, but in return get ultimate power? Or would you take the path of the martyr and be killed right now, but will one day cause a great evil to be vanquished? And that's a choice that the Lord of Time faced, as well as the Muse of Space. They both got the same choice, and they chose oppositely.
Yes. Which is basically like the most plot. That's basically like the main plot in Homestuck. Because that is what decides the fate of the universe.
Yeah, because the Lord of Time becomes the big bad guy. He's already here from the very beginning.
He's the antagonist, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess let's... Oh, horror terrorists. Forgot to mention them.
Oh, yeah.
Because, the dream selves that are on Prospit, they can look into Skya, the big magical entity, and they can see predestination within it. They get
in the clouds.
Yeah, that's their advantage. But the ones that are in Durst, you might think, why would they be on the enemy side? Well, they get to get information from these things called the horror terrors.
They're basically Lovecraftian.
Eldritch creatures.
Yeah, eldritch creatures.
But they're not necessarily evil, so you can maybe trust their advice?
Maybe.
Question mark?
Yeah. And they hear the horror terrors.
Okay, so that's basically the game of Spurb. I really wish we could go more in depth, but we are running out of time. Yes. We need to devote some time to talk about the characters of Homestuck, because that's one thing Homestuck does really well is, there is so much talking And I like that because there's so much character built into these characters. Like they're so multifaceted. Mm-hmm. All right. How about we just kind of switch and we just talk about them as fast as we can?
Okay.
Do you want to go first or should I?
You go first.
All right. Okay, Kira, I'm going first. So the first character is John. He becomes the heir of breath. He's a dorky kid. He really likes comedies and bad movies.
And Nicolas Cage.
He's a big Nicolas Cage fan. And he ends up being the main character who ends up trying to save the universe because he gets retcon powers to undo a lot of bad things. Mm-hmm.
And one of his friends is Rose, who is very intelligent, and she likes to think of herself as a bit of a psychologist. And she is very serious, and she reads a lot, and she's the sort of, I don't know, how would you say that? Like the...
snooty type?
Yes. She's very pretentious sometimes. But she is the seer of light, and she ends up leading them a lot of the time through what they need to do, because she knows more.
She can foresee the most victorious path. Mm-hmm. Dave is the Knight of Time, and because of that, he ends up being able to weaponize time travel. Mm-hmm. So, like, basically in the time of the comic, he's, like, lived the comic 3 times over, because he's just extended time with stable time loops. He meets himself very frequently. He uses it in battle. He loves to rap, and he likes irony, but... and interesting character development. He starts off fairly hetero, but by the end of it, he really embraces who he is and ends up dating another guy.
And Jade is also their friend. She's the Witch of Space. She is kind of ditzy and, like, she's very a dreamer. And she lives alone on an island, so she's not very socially graceful. She's very awkward like John. But she is very kind, sweet, and empathetic. And she uses her space powers as the Witch of Space to, like, shrink planets.
She can change the size of things.
Yes.
Yeah, she personally will, like, store planets in her inventory. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's another group of humans, because eventually the humans failed and they had to completely reset the game. But when they did so, their ancestors, their parents, grandpas, whatever, ended up taking the place as them. Mm-hmm. So instead, you have Nana as Jane. She becomes the Maid of Life. And her ability lets her revive one person, one time. But she can do it to anybody.
And she also has general healing powers.
Exactly. She's really nice, but she's a bit of a dork. Mm-hmm. And she hopes to one day rule the Betty Crocker Empire.
Yes. Because she's the heir of that.
That's a thing.
Jane's best friend is Roxy, who is a hacker girl, and she's
actually not good at hacking. She pretends.
Oh yeah, I guess.
She's a drunk.
Yes. Well, yeah. I was trying to figure out a way to say that.
At first she is, but she ends up, like, sobering up partway through the story. Mm-hmm.
She is the Rogue of Void, which basically means she takes nothingness from things and therefore causes things to exist.
Which is awesome.
Yes.
So then there's Dirk. He is super big into irony. Like, you can't trust anything he says because it's layered in, like, 17 shades of irony. Mm-hmm. And he is the Prince of Heart, which means he's the destroyer of heart, the destroyer of soul. He splinters souls.
Yes.
He also is really good at rapping.
And robotics.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. He created an AI duplicate of himself. Mm-hmm. I.e., he splintered his own soul as an AI.
Yeah. And then there's Jake, who is the dorky one who lived on his island, has an English accent, talks very formally, and he is the Page of Hope, which basically means he creates hope.
Yep. He does a hope field. Mm-hmm. And he loves movies like John.
Yes.
But he doesn't just like bad movies. He likes all movies.
Yes.
Also, there's this running gag in the show, like when John was commanded by the narrators, like, John, retrieve your arms. He goes to his fake chest and pulls out his arms. It's like, what do you want me to do with these? But Jake, however, it's like, Jake, retrieve your arms. He pulls out, like, pistols. I forgot what type they were. I think, were they flintlock pistols?
Flintlock.
Yeah. And he's like, got my arms. I am ready. I'm locked and loaded.
Yes.
Okay, so we talked about the humans. Let's talk about the trolls.
There are 12 of them in this first series.
So, like, the trolls, we already talked about, like, what the trolls are and their culture. Aradia is Ares, and she also ends up becoming the Maid of Time. Mm-hmm. So she dutifully sacrifices herself over and over and over again in alternate timelines to save the group. Mm-hmm. She also died at one point, but she came back when she went God tier.
Yeah, she dies a lot.
Yeah, she was very into death until she came back to life, and now she's even more into death, but in a happy way.
Yeah. Corpse parties. There's Tavros, which is Tauros, and he's kind of a nerdy guy, and he's very nervous. And he actually is in a wheelchair because of events that happened.
He's handicapped.
Yeah, he's handicapped. So he's very awkward and not very confident in himself.
He's a pacifist.
Yes, actually. What is he? Page of Breath?
Well, he never went God tier, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But, yeah, he never, like, killed anything. He made friends with all the enemies until he had to participate in the final fight.
Yeah.
Then there's Solix. He has, like, a whole bifurcation gimmick. He's Gemini. Oh, we never talked about troll blood colors.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a hemo spectrum for trolls. Like, when it comes to race, they don't have, like, all the kinds of races that we have. They have colors. Aradia, being Aries, she was a burgundy blood. She was at the very lowest end of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. And then Tavros, he had bronze. And Solix, he has golden. These affect what kinds of abilities they get. It's way too much for us to really go into. It's something I figured we should mention. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Solix, he has a bunch of psychic powers, and he dies a lot.
And he's also a very good programmer.
Oh yeah, he's the real hacker of the game.
Yes. There's Karkat. He likes to pretend he's a hacker. His blood is mutant candy red, but he wears a gray symbol and always types in gray. Yeah,
because that's not part of the official system. Mm-hmm. Like, that color is not recognized. Therefore, he would be killed on sight if anyone saw it.
Yes, exactly. And it's said that he's a mutated lime blood, which was supposed to be in this spot.
Yep, but instead he's a mutant. Mm-hmm. He is a good leader, but he always says the F word.
Yeah, he's constantly cursing and yelling, and like his mannerisms are very harsh, but he is actually very caring and cares a lot about his friends and tries very hard to keep them alive.
Now, Nepeta, she represents Leo, and she's an olive blood. Mm-hmm. She's really animalistic. She loves cats, and she likes talking about animals, and like she hunts for a living.
She likes to role play.
That too, yes.
And
she also role plays as animals.
Yeah, by olive we mean olive green. Olive green.
What other olive is there?
There's different colors of olives.
Black. I don't know. I don't eat olives. Next.
Kanaya, vampire fashion queen. She is amazing. She's a jade blood, and her sign is Virgo. And yeah, she loves fashion and turns into a vampire and is generally a badass.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Terezi, she's blind, and she's a teal blood, and her symbol is Libra. But she's also really proud of being blind. She ends up using her sense of smell to compensate.
Yes.
Which I think is funny. Usually people pick hearing, but she does smell. Mm-hmm. She's really good at smelling. In fact, she also licks. Like she has a special calibrated computer monitor that she can taste the colors. Mm-hmm. She's also just good at it. So yeah, next.
Next is Vriska. She's like cerulean blue is her blood color. She is a huge bitch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she's like, pretty evil and
I mean, I don't like using that
term.
But yeah, like she's complicated because at the same time, you want to root for her because she's like the most capable member of the entire cast.
But she's also a very terrible person.
Yeah, she bullies everyone. She literally even went to an alternate timeline version of herself who had given up trying to win the game, and she bullied herself
into making the alternate version of herself cry.
Yeah, and then stole her girlfriend.
Yes.
So,
and also she is responsible for Aradi's death and Tavros being in a wheelchair.
As well as killing a version of him.
Yes.
And she becomes the Thief of Light.
Mm-hmm. And she actually goes God tier. So, yeah. And her whole gimmick is...
She can steal luck.
Yeah, her whole gimmick is that she steals the luck. All of the luck.
All of it.
Yes.
She's also has like a whole arachnid type of theme to her.
Mm-hmm.
Now we also have Equius. He represents Sagittarius, and he's an indigo blood. Because he's so high up in the hemo spectrum, he takes royalty and authority very seriously.
He's also very strong.
He's also very creepy.
Yes.
He's the kind of guy that would go to a dominatrix and then like be embarrassed but happy at the same time about visiting her. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
That kind of describes him in a nutshell. Mm-hmm. Okay, we can move on.
There is Gamzee. He is an indigo blood?
No, purple.
And he is kind of crazy. He's basically a druggie, like a stoner.
Yeah, at the very beginning, he completely doesn't represent a threat. He's actually a rage player.
Yeah, Bard of Rage.
He doesn't go God tier, though, but he's still incredibly powerful. And he ends up going psycho later when he runs out of his alien drug.
Mm-hmm. And
he kills a lot of the cast.
And also, it's somewhat becomes one of the most important characters in the story.
Yeah, he raises the Lord of Time as a child, mm-hmm. who then ends up like becoming part of him.
Yes. And also, Gamzee only ever dies, once?
It's like 2 or 3 times. But that's really small in the grand scheme of things.
Yes, he's the one that dies the least out of almost all the characters.
Yeah, because you have to count his dream self.
Mm-hmm.
But, okay, next we have Eridan. What's the word you would describe Eridan as? There's a particular word they call him a lot. Starts with the letter D.
He's a douchebag.
Yeah, that's what they call him a lot. He's kind of a Harry Potter fanboy.
Yes.
But he denies that magic is real, to the point where when he even starts using magic, he calls it like science beams. Mm-hmm. He lives underwater because the higher you are on the hemospectrum, the more you can survive in water. He can completely do it. And he wants to commit genocide against all the lower castes.
All the land dwellers.
Yeah, I hate him.
Mm-hmm.
Some people like him, but...
He's one of the villains of the comic.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Next.
Feferi. She is...
an heiress.
Yes, she's an heiress. She's set to be the queen or the empress.
Oh, Pisces.
Yeah, she's Pisces. She has, what is it called? Tyrian?
Fuchsia?
Fuchsia, you can call it. Fuchsia blood.
It's called fuchsia.
Yeah, but there's another word for it, like Tyrian purple or something like that.
Maybe, but it's fuchsia.
Yes, but she has fuchsia blood, and she...
we forgot to mention that Eridan was Aquarius and violet blood.
Yes.
My bad.
Yeah. And she lives underwater as well. And
she completely lives underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only like one of her at a time, aside from the ruling empress.
Yes, because of their system.
Exactly. And they will kill each other because their culture is all into killing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's another group of trolls. We got to go through this one really fast.
Yeah.
But basically,
we
just
don't
like
know that much about them
anyway.
anyway.
The humans had alternate versions, so do the trolls. You mind if I just do this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So there's Damara. She's like Aradia, the Burgundy blood, except she hates everybody and she only speaks broken Japanese. There's Rufio, yes, like the guy from Hook, and he has mutant wings and he's friends with everybody. Now there's Matuna. He's like Solix, except he has a little bit of brain damage because of some sacrifice he made. He also shoots lasers a lot. There's Kankri. He's like Karkat, the guy that says the F word, but he's a good leader. Except Kankri acts very polite, but he really is a kind of a jerk.
Yes.
Like, he acts like he's super progressive on everything, except he refuses to acknowledge feminism.
Yeah.
Which really upsets Porum. Mulin, she's like Nepeta, except she's... I don't know that much about her personality. I guess she kind of goes towards the dark side of things more often. She hangs out with Kurlos a lot. Porum, she's basically feminism incarnate.
Yeah, she's like Kanaya.
Yes, except whereas Kanaya is based on the Virgin Mary, Purim is all about like letting yourself go and being proud of it. Latula, instead of,
Latula.
I think it's Latula.
No, it's Latula.
Okay. She can't smell, but she can see. And she's super rad.
Yeah.
She's basically based on the archetype of a game girl.
Yeah, she skateboards.
There's Aranea. She's like Vriska, the capable but terrible bullier. Except she's extremely expository, except she turns out to still be kind of a jerk as well later on.
Yeah.
When she decides that she needs to be the main protagonist, and so does that very violently. There's Horus. He's really into horses. He's really strong like Equius, though. There's Kurlos. He's like Gamzee, who's the creepy guy that ends up becoming part of the main antagonist. Kurlos helps him, but Kurlos never speaks. He's like, he's very silent in his rage.
Oh, Muline is deaf, by the way.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yes.
Oh, so the deaf girl's friends with the mute guy. So Cronus, he's like Eridan, but even worse. He constantly hits on everybody. Yeah. And then there's Mina, who's like Feferi. She's an heiress. She has fuchsia blood, except in an alternate universe, she ends up becoming the ruler that institutes all of the killing rules.
Yeah,
she's the reason that troll society is so terrible.
Yeah, and in this universe, Feferi is actually the empress, so...
Yep. Now, there's also the Cherubs. We talked about them. Calliope and Caliborn. They're the Muse of Space and the Lord of Time. They have a really weird reproduction system.
Yeah, Calliope is the Muse of Space. Caliborn is the Lord of Time.
Now, there's also the First Guardians. Every game session gets a First Guardian to try to ensure that it does happen correctly. Beckwhirl is the omnipotent dog that Jade has in the human session. In the alternate human session, there's Godcat, which is a lot less trustworthy. There's also Doc Scratch in the troll session. He is basically the devil. But he never lies, and that's what's so creepy but interesting about him. He manipulates you while telling you the truth. And then there's Lord English. We already talked about him a lot. He's the Lord of Time. Like Caliborn combines a bunch of people and becomes Lord English.
Yes.
And then Andrew Hussie, the creator of the comic, he ends up actually making an appearance in the comic.
Yes.
And Lord English kills him.
Yeah.
Kills the author. Okay. Whew, that was a lot to get through.
Yeah, it was.
I really want to revisit Homestuck because we just have so much to talk about.
Yeah, a lot.
But why don't we try to actually evaluate it now that we've talked about it? Do you want to start?
Okay, so as far as orientation goes, there's a lot of good representation in Homestuck.
Definitely.
Yeah, because the trolls basically are all bisexual. They don't care about which gender.
Yeah, gender is literally vestigial in their species.
Yes. So, yeah. And even some of the humans are basically, they either turn out to be gay or like they...
Like the main character, John, is like the only hetero character.
Yeah, basically. Because like Rose is a lesbian. Dave is kind of pansexual. He doesn't end up not really giving a shit about gender.
No, he comes out of the closet as gay.
Yeah, fair enough. Jade just kind of doesn't care about romance either way. So I guess maybe a romantic. Jake
No, she dated Dave Sprite.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So she's into sprites. Male sprites.
Yeah.
Now, on the subject of race, I think Homestuck did relatively well. Not as good as orientation. Because with the trolls, like they have so many fictional races. That's cool. But with the humans, you'll notice in Homestuck, all the humans are just colored like F white. Like hex code white. Like not like Caucasian, but like actual white. I just want to make that clear since this is an audio podcast.
Yes.
And now the reason they do that is a stylistic choice. And so they claim that really race is not a part of who the human kids are. You can substitute whatever race you want them to be. But actually, if you read the comic, you could kind of deduce what race each kid is, despite the stylistic choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Because like half of them are blonde. So naturally that means they're probably Caucasian.
Yeah, it's more likely.
Yep. Now Jade is really hinted to be a Pacific Islander because that's where she lives. Mm-hmm. It's in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, and Jake too.
Yeah, and therefore that means John and Jane must at least be part that way, part Pacific Islander. Mm-hmm. So with race, they're okay.
Yeah.
Now with gender, though, that's the biggest problem I have with Homestuck.
Yeah, because it's all completely binary, even when it's a freaking alien race that literally gender is vestigial. It still
has no functional purpose in their reproduction.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you're wondering, yes, there is, like, they go into great detail on how they reproduce.
Yes.
So yeah, gender just doesn't matter, but it's always a binary, especially like with the classes and the aspects. Certain ones are gender exclusive.
Yeah, actually, the Lord is exclusively assigned to males, and Muse is exclusively assigned to females.
Yeah, so therefore, I have to ask, if you are a non-binary person, you played Spurb, what would happen?
I don't know. I guess you.
Well, the answer is Hussie just doesn't care.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to believe that you would then just have to get one of the classes that isn't gender specific. Mm-hmm. Now, I feel now we obviously like Homestuck very much, so I would really want to do more episodes on Homestuck.
Yes. But
I figured we should also talk about the reason, like a particular reason why Homestuck means so much to Kira and I.
Yes. Actually, we met by a Homestuck forum in which we both posted on.
Yeah.
So.
And we specifically posted on a thread about becoming Moirails.
Yeah, about finding friends.
That's why, and we were very non-traditionalist, so we often, like, when people ask, like, what the status is of our relationship, the answer is not always, like, the easiest thing to say.
Yeah.
Most people don't understand when you just say Moirail. I think we kind of vacillate between Moirail and Mate Sprit.
I guess.
Maybe we're a charm. Maybe we're a combination of the heart, rainbow, and pot of gold charms.
Okay. I can accept that.
Now, so that's going to be our Homestuck episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys are interested, I really suggest that you check it out. We plan on doing multiple visitations to the same franchises in these deep dives, so we are really looking forward to the time when we can revisit Homestuck and go into one of these parts of Homestuck more in depth.
Yes.
Now, before we close out the episode, though, we actually got some feedback in, finally, and someone gave us an actual correction. Should we say who they were?
I don't remember.
Unless they give us permission, we're not going to say who they are.
Okay.
But they gave us some corrections to our fantasy episode, our last episode. The first one is that Tolkien is British. I thought he was American. He's British. Mm-hmm. And another is that we were talking about how orcs were kind of like racist. Mm-hmm. And we implied or said directly that they was specifically racist towards people of African descent. Mm-hmm. But it turns out that Tolkien actually claimed that they were racist towards people of Mongol descent. Yeah.
Basically, Asiatic?
Northern Asian.
Yeah.
But, Mongolian. And, I mean, Mongols were a very brutal people, but it's still kind of racist.
Yeah.
So our point still kind of stands, but we wanted to point out those corrections. Mm-hmm. Now, all right, so check us out. If you have some feedback, you want to give it to us, do gametheorems@gmail.com. We also have a bunch of social media. We got YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Is that all of it? Tumblr, yes. Can't forget the Tumblr. Homestuck is big on Tumblr. Mm-hmm. Oh, I wanted to talk about something else.
What?
You might have noticed people of Homestuck being toxic at, like, conventions and whatnot. Please don't judge the whole thing based on just a few, like, people like that. It's okay to condemn them. That behavior's not okay.
Yeah, but Homestuck itself is a great work of art.
I think so. One more thing, we actually have a document containing a lot of this information that we are working on. You can find it in the link below the episode. Mm-hmm. All right, bye.
Bye.